Hello and welcome back to FrogClan. We are picking up where we left off. I recorded the last two episodes back to back to just kind of leave us all on the same cliffhanger about what's going to happen in today's episode here with our next time skip. And I've given it a lot of thought. There were some comments about making cats that didn't have traits, like have an event that would lead to them possibly developing mutations. There were a lot of thoughts along those lines here, but I honestly really want to avoid doing that because I'm already making allowances for cats to help other cats and improve their roles that way. Just kind of feels like it defeats the purpose of the challenge to keep adding stipulations to make it easier when the intention was to make it harder as we went on. So unfortunately, whatever it's going to be is whatever it's going to be. I've kind of unilaterally decided that. If the entire clan does happen to get wiped out this episode, then we could always try again with another clan, or we can just try a different challenge depending on what ends up happening. Before we do anything though, I do want to go through here real quick because there's been some updates since last time. There was one big one and then like a mini fix since then. So let's just take a look here. We have Softstar, who's been pondering recent dreams lately. He is strict and a good hunter. Then we have Wisteria Berry, who is strange and an eloquent speaker. Lotus Shade, who is compassionate with a deep StarClan bond. And I'm so sorry, Lotus Shade. We have Fog Emperor, who's confident and a fantastic healer. And there were definitely some comments that I should have just kept her name as Roach. I know, it's a very unique name. I just don't really like it, so I just changed it. We have Brookfruit, who is vengeful and incredibly clever. Lobster Shell, who is sneaky and a great speaker. Sorrel Feather, who's ambitious and a good speaker. Egret Dapple, who's loving and a great hunter. Worm, who's playful and a good speaker. Snip Husk, who's loyal and a great teacher. Heather Patch, who's calm and a great speaker. Deer Fate, who's strict and a great hunter. Oatleaf, who's thoughtful and a great teacher. Bright Torrent, who's bloodthirsty and an excellent teacher. There's so many cats that are injured. Specklefleck, that's fierce and a great hunter. Gold Mouse, that's wise and a good teacher. Conifer Apple, who's childish and a good speaker. Fernleaf, who's sneaky but a renowned hunter, so a really good hunter. Timetail, who's bold and a great hunter. Big Pelt, who's thoughtful and an excellent teacher. Acorn Paw, who's lonesome and constantly climbing. Privet Paw, who's adventurous and now oddly observant since the apprentices get traits now as well. Okay. So, with that, we're going to go ahead, skip, resolve some things, and go right into the event. There's really no point delaying, but I'm very nervous. So, Softstar has been following the progress of Acorn Paw for moons and feels that it's time for them to get their warrior name. They are granted the name Acorn Crest and honor their independence. That is a really cool name. Worm unfortunately does pass a red cough, and the clan mourns their loss as they take their place in StarClan. Softstar has gotten a running nose. Bright Torrent has healed from their mangled tail but will forever be marked by a scar. So Bright Torrent actually has developed a new mutation, probably on the tail. But they also misstep slipping from a rock and spraining their paw. Gold Mouse heals much better and is no longer suffering from shock. Big Pelt's lungs are clear, they're back to breathing normally. Acorn Crest now is no longer in shock. Fog Ember struggled to hear ever since their frostbite, so that's also a scar. Privet Paw feels more like himself, their shock is gone. Worm does pass a red cough, and Lungwort has gone bad. So, we do at least get a few random mutations that come in. It's mostly on cats that already had them, but I suppose something beats nothing. We'll go through all these here. Okay. So let's roll partial hearing loss, permanent condition. Oh, look at her. Look at her ears. Let's roll for these cats to get their new mutations. So Fog Ember ends up with tattered ears, which is fair given the condition that she actually has, scarred from an injury, frostbite. Part of the new updates too is that cats are more likely to be scarred from these events. So if given a bit more time, some of these other cats could have ended up with scars as well. But Bright Torrent was our other one. We got a mangled tail. She doesn't have anything on her tail, so we'll go ahead and add something there. Okay, because Bright Torrent isn't terrifying enough, she ends up with a stinger tail. Venomous teeth, a stinger tail, and a bloodthirsty cat. What could go wrong? So this is Big Pelt. First time seeing her fully grown without the water in her lungs. Northcorn Crest turned out to be lonesome and a good climber. Any cats that have that strong swimmer trait would do well here, but just scrolling through, I'm sadly not seeing that. Alright, it's time to do some calculations, so I'll come back when everything is done, and we'll see what happens. Okay, I know I said I wasn't really going to make any special allowances, but to be upfront, I did the actual calculations per the challenge, and per the challenge, everybody except for one cat was neutral at best. So that means that nobody would have survived. So what I did instead was I took into account basically nothing and just rolled a flat d20 for everybody. They needed to get above a 15 to survive, and that was the only stipulation. And that yielded some interesting results. I will say I'm very surprised by some of the cats that did survive. And others, it didn't really change their fate very much. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. Sassar calls the clan together as an immense storm looms on the horizon. Even some of the most stalwart clanmates are very nervous seeing thunderheads at large, and the sea itself is really choppy and rough in ways that the clan hasn't really ever seen before. The shore seems to be higher than it's ever been even at high tide, and it seems to be coming in with a vengeance. The clan looks to Softstar, who stands on top of the boat, to make this announcement to them. Softstar explains his dream and tells his clan not to worry. They have already outlined a place high up on the cliffs for the clan to go, and they don't know how long they'll have to be up there. But this is going to be the best place for them, and together the entire clan can take shelter. They won't have to worry about anything there. The clan, relieved by Sawstar's forethought, all take their supplies from herbs to other objects, mostly herbs and themselves that they can manage. The sick and the wounded are helped by the healthy to the top of the cliff, where they anxiously await the storm that they know is coming. They take shelter under some overhangs of rock and in hollows, hoping to wait out the storm, high above their normal beach. The storm breaks with a vengeance, and very suddenly. The entire sky goes from a dim light of clouds and overcast to the black of night as these clouds roll in, lit up only by the flash of lightning. The clan huddles together, not even really looking for the most part down at the waters below, as they know that they are overtaking the beach and the home that they knew, and they don't know what they'll be returning to later, so they don't want to see the devastation that could be brought upon them. The clan is not really looking as the storm goes on, and even if they were, it'd be very, very hard to see through the driving rain, which completely breaks up their view of the clan. It is actually Wisteria Berry who has adaptable vision that's looking out from the opening of the camp. And in one of the lightning flashes, he's able to see that some of the shifting water that he had assumed was mostly a trick of the rain really actually wasn't. And the water has advanced so fast, so quickly, they can only assume that some kind of immense storm or wave has come over the camp, and the tide is still rising. He looks down in dismay as soon as he realizes this, the water pours in past his paws into the rest of the clan's shelter area. And the clan all looks up with horror as they are suddenly found themselves engulfed by salt water. Wisteria Berry yells what warning he can and makes for the area beyond the shelter of the overhang. He tries to help out what clanmates he can, but in the dark and confusion of the swirling water, he doesn't even know who he's helping. He grabs scruff after scruff, and eventually, as the waves break over his head, he doesn't even know if he's helping or hurting his clanmates any further. He breaks out for open water, looking around desperately for any sign of land, but this wave or flood or whatever this may be has crested even the highest part of the cliff home, and the clan all looks around, drenched and bobbing, as they try and take stock of what's happened. Wisteria Berry in particular, being the first and only cat to really have any kind of forewarning about what's happening, tries to take stock of his clan. He knows only that there are fewer heads above the surface than there should be. Looking out through the rain and storm, he does see something that breaks above the surface even, and something that doesn't match up with the rough churn and whitewash of the waves. Wisteria Berry is shocked to see that one of the boats that the clan has abandoned down on the beach is actually still seaworthy, and it is drifting completely fine above the surface of the water. Wisteria Berry calls out to the rest of his clan, telling them about their salvation, and is chiding himself for his foolishness and following Sawstar up to the cliffs when these strange boat things that they've always lived in and knew that the humans used to sail were always right there all along. But he thanks the gift from StarClan and that this vessel is seaworthy, or at least seaworthy enough, and he manages to scramble aboard. From here, he is exhausted. The taste of the salt lines his mouth and blurs his eyes, so he struggles to see, even with his excellent vision, the rest of his clanmates and what fell to them. He can only look on and hope that his clanmates will make it close enough for him to help them aboard this boat. Lotus Shade, as soon as she knew what was coming, resigned herself to her fate. She is old now. She is past her prime. She's been ready to hand off her clan to the next generation that can care for them. And she knows she doesn't have the strength and power to swim, not with the injury that she has, and not at the age that she is. Lotus Shade is therefore on the outskirts of the cave when it floods. And because of that, she is actually buoyed, at least briefly, to the top of the tide as it rises. She is shocked to find that her back, while it's very broken and injured, is actually not paining her as much without the effect of gravity on her spine. She sets off instinctually, trying to find any kind of shelter or anything that she can do further to help her clanmates. She sees Fog Ember, who is keeping her company, bob up next to her, and the two, spluttering, try and find any kind of salvation. Lotus Shade uses her prehensile tail to latch on to Fog Ember in an attempt to keep both of them aloft as the two medicine cats help one another. Fog Ember is at a bit of a disadvantage here due to her tattered ears and partial hearing loss because of it. But she does have a narrow head, which allows her to be a bit more streamlined through the water than otherwise. And while she is older and hasn't quite seen anything like this, she is a confident cat and knows that if Wisteria Berry was the one to see the incoming danger, that he'll be the one to follow. So she tows along Lotus Shade and calls out to her clanmates to follow Wisteria Berry towards wherever he's going. She doesn't know where this is going, but she has a confidence and makes the correct assumption that Wisteria Berry is going in the correct direction. Now, she's older herself, and the ways are very vicious, so she's not able to help along any more than Lotus Shade. And really, even then, she's more towing Lotus Shade than anything else. But the two do make it to the boat, where together Fog Ember and Wisteria Berry are able to tow Lotus Shade into the boat. Fog Ember through her tail, and Wisteria Berry through her scruff. It greatly pains Lotus Shade, but she does make it up onto the surface of the boat successfully that way. And she and Fog Ember are both safe. Fog Ember debates going back onto the waves to help their clan, but through the driving rain, pounding surf, and her own exhaustion from making the trip once with one cat who could barely help themselves, Fog Ember hesitates, and while she feels like a coward, she knows her limitations and knows that if she goes back out into the surf to help somebody else, she will not make it, never mind help them make it. And it'd be best for her to treat the shock and any other ill side effects of the swim for her clanmates when they get here. And so she sets off trying to soothe Lotus Shade and ready to help Wisteria Berry with any cats that come along. Brookfruit was one of the cats in the very back of the cave when it first initially flooded. Now, he is vengeful, and I think as the panic sets in when he understands that he is in the back of the cave that is quickly flooding and is soon going to be completely unnavigatable, he scrambles over another cat, kicking them back further into the cave as he, in his haste to get out. Unfortunately, it doesn't help him at all, and as the surf goes into this cave, he finds himself completely blinded in a dark tunnel, and losing all sense of direction, he does not make it out. Done. Lobster Shell does not know this clan very well at all. She knows that they're doing their best to care for her, despite her, inability to do so for herself or to really even contribute to them in any way. She does have a seal nose, however, so when she heard that there was meant to be this flood, she has some confidence in her ability to get out. She waits at the back of the cave, relatively unconcerned about her predicament. Instead, she uses her great speaking talents to try and bring comfort to the clan that is terrified. When the water rushes in, she's still not feeling entirely uncertain about her fate, as she just takes a very deep breath, seals her nose, and sets off to swim through the cavern. She also gets lost and turned around, but she has extra time and the benefit of not panicking because of lack of time due to her ability to hold her breath for as long as she does. What she doesn't account for is how much her broken bone is paining her right now, even with the water taking away the weight of her own body. And it really hurts trying to set off and swim with this like that, so she holds it close to her body as she swims with her other 3 legs. She keeps swimming and does eventually manage to find her way out. She breaks through the surface of the water, only to be greeted by a dark night and driving sheets of rain and surf. She finds herself hounded over and over and over again by the waves as she looks for any kind of indication about where she should go. But with her dark pelt, the rest of her clanmates can't see her against the waves, and in desperation, and with the inability to see or anything better helping her to swim directly, any kind of muscular talents, she sets off in the wrong direction. This is all the poor luck that she needs to never make it back. And she was such a pretty cat. I was really fond of the lobster shell name too. Now, Sorrel Feather was, of course, in the cave with the rest of his clan when everything happened. He was towards the back with Brookfruit and is actually the cat that Brookfruit scrambled over in order to make it out. Sorrel Feather realized about the same time that Brookfruit did what was happening, of course, but he just didn't move quickly enough, and that moment of kicking him back as Brookfruit tried to scramble out is all that needed to happen for Sorrel Feather to get knocked against a rock, disoriented and confused, and he's unable to regain his senses before the water floods in, completely preventing him any chance of making it out. And done. Egret is very much in the same boat as the rest of the clan. The waves flood in and disorient her, but she is lucky enough to get dragged back out by the same surf that so powerfully pushed its way into the cave in the first place. She bobs to the top of the water and is looking around, calling out to her clanmates for any kind of reassurance and hope. She sees Wisteria Berry set off and sees the direction that the 2 medicine cats are going as well. She is further away from them, though, and paddles after them. She swims and swims and swims until she is exhausted and can't swim any further, but she's completely lost sight of the rest of the clan. She has been dragged out to sea by an unforgiving tide, and despite her best efforts, she just can't recuperate from it, and she eventually exhausts herself and is never seen again. Sniphusk, who was still grieving, was near the front of the cave with her father, Wisteria Berry. She was trying to take solace where she can, but there's also probably something that just calls to her in the ferocity of the storm, especially in her grieving nature. When the initial tide comes in, she is swept further back into the cave by the sheer force of it, and manages to overcome this, knowing the exact direction that she went, and being very lucky in knowing so. She sets off and manages to break the surface of the tide. She has a seal nose, and so she was able to get a good enough breath for her to manage to navigate through the tunnel despite the disorientation. Her stinger tail does drag her down a little bit, just not very water dynamic, I suppose, and creates drag when she tries to swim. But she manages to come up near her father, Wisteria Berry, and see the way the medicine cats are going. She sets off, making sure to take very deep breaths wherever she can, and then even though the tide rolls her over a few times, she manages to reorient herself with the extra time that her deep lungs allow her to. And she does manage to make it to the boat. Her father is extremely relieved to see her and grabs her by the scruff, pulling her up and onto the boat. She's shocked and is at a loss for what's happened, but is taken under the wings of the two healers who reassure her, and Fog Ember wastes no time in treating her shock. Sniphusk's small body, by the way, is what was causing her to be thrown about by the surf a little bit more so than some of the other cats may have. Heatherpatch is unfortunately in the cave towards the back with Sorrelfeather when everything happens. She sees Sorrelfeather get thrust back, and with her calm nature under stress, tries to help him to his inability to even recognize her. The water floods in, and even then, she is still trying to remain calm. If she can just keep a mental map of the cave, it's not very deep, and it's a pretty straightforward shot. She tries to drag Sorrelfeather before realizing that she's running out of air and making for the front of the cave. She was not expecting the cavern to have completely filled with the tide as powerful as it has, and is pushed back repeatedly despite her best efforts. She never makes it out. Done. Dear Fame sees Heatherpatch overcome by the surf, and even though he makes it out of the cavern, he knows that with the tide that was going in as powerfully as it was, that she will not make it out herself. Dear Fade, even as he bobs to the surface of the water, knows that the same is true for a lot of his clanmates. He feels immense grief even before he truly knows who and what is lost, and it makes his movements heavy as he tries to swim through the surf. But he knows somewhere deep down that he wasn't ever going to survive all the events that StarClan was predicting. And with despair in his heart, he doesn't even try to continue to search for salvation. He looks around, sees only water, and gives up. Okay. And the further we go along into this, more cats are likely to be grieving as well. Oatleaf has a mangled leg, and so she was one of the cats farthest into the cave as well. She looks up when she sees the water flooding in, and wonders if this wasn't actually the event that StarClan was trying to warn the cats about. She also looks down at her mangled leg and knows that the muscle is too torn, too ruined for her to do anything very compelling for herself and in any effort to survive. Oatleaf doesn't necessarily give up, but she knows that there's no real point in trying without help, and seeing her clanmates all scrambling for the exit, she knows that she has been left behind, and she knows that she won't make it out. She still tries, but she was correct in her predictions. Specklefleck, who is fierce, is doing her best to push her clanmates out of the cave ahead of her, fiercely protecting them, even at the cost of her own life. She manages to get a few out before the water completely overtakes her head. She pushes for the surface, but while she manages to get there and actually sees her friend Bright Torrent bobbing along next to her, some strange animal is swimming below them. They don't know what it is exactly, except that it's a fish the likes of which the clan has never seen before. It seems this tide has brought up something more than just water for them to face. The cats look at one another, and Bright Torrent sets off towards Specklefleck to try and help her. But Specklefleck is grabbed by this fish, much larger than any cat is, and as fierce as Specklefleck fights on the way down, she never returns to the surface. Okay. So Goldmouse, who is wise and a good teacher, is not able to solve this problem by thinking about the time something like this happened. This is something beyond even her wise experience, and she's completely flabbergasted when the water rises beyond her knees. She sets off for the front of the cave and is one of the cats that Specklefleck is able to guide out. She breaks the surface of the water, near enough to Specklefleck to see what happens, and looks on horrified at the sudden change of the food chain here. She looks down, but doesn't see any such threat to herself, and seeing Specklefleck disappear, and with the current condition that she's in, even just trying to stay afloat in this rough sea, she sets off away from Bright Torrent, who's crying out in shock and grief at Specklefleck's fate. Goldmouse is convinced that if there is salvation, it is away from here. Unfortunately, she, like Lobster Shell, sets off in the wrong direction of where salvation actually lays, and she is never seen again. Okay. There really isn't very much to say about Conifer Apple. She is young and inexperienced, and while she's strong and is able to set off for the surface, she, too, is just too far away from the clan. She's cast out to the open ocean by a tide that she does not have the physical power to fight, and even during the initial moments of flooding, she was cracking childish jokes. I don't think she realized the danger to herself before it was far too late, and then she didn't have the strength or experience to fight her fate for very long, and she drowns. Okay. Privapaw, who is an adventurous apprentice all by herself in the apprentice and young cat den, set off to the rock shelf above the cave whenever everything first started. She wanted to look out at the storm, and the clan was at least fairly confident in her ability to be up there without danger. She actually does see the rising tide before the rest of the clan does, because of her unique perspective looking down. She goes to warn the rest of the clan, however, and she slips on a rock, hitting her head and falling unconscious. The clan, in their haste to get out of the cave, doesn't even remember she was up there until it's way too late, and Privapaw is already lost. Okay. So Brightorrent sees her clanmate and friend getting dragged under the water by this huge unknown sea creature, the likes of which the clan has never been seen before. Brightorrent, who has a venomous teeth and a stinger tail and is bloodthirsty, vows that she will enact revenge on this fish, and she will not let it claim another loved one. She looks around and sees her love interest, Fernleap, emerging slick and exhausted already from the cave, gulping in air hastily. It's a miracle that she even sees him with his dark pelt, but she does manage to do so. She sets off towards him with powerful strokes, and the two cats manage to exchange a glance of lost hope and despair before they hear Wisteria Berry calling out to them. He has managed to spot Brightorrent, who has a lighter pelt amongst the waves, and tells them about the boat and just says if they can just make it, they'll be okay. Brightorrent vows, with all the adrenaline and passion in her blood, that she will make it, and so will Fernleap. Fernleap sets out with her, without necessarily the same resolve, and soon finds himself constantly exhausted fighting the waves in front of him. He keeps pushing, but his head, whenever it's pushed underwater by a wave, takes longer and longer to reemerge. Brightorrent sees this, and despite her sprained paw, is a stronger swimmer, possibly due to her strange mutations that she has, or possibly just due to revenge, and the need for revenge that boils in her blood. She sees her crush and friend being pushed under the water, and when he doesn't come back up for way too many heartbeats, she dives under the water and manages to swim her way into his body. She manages to navigate to his scruff and bites down hard, lifting her head and his above the surface. Through sheer will and determination alone, she manages to tow the two to the boat, where they are helped up to safety. Brightorrent lays there completely and utterly exhausted. Her paw hurt even more than it once was, and doesn't notice when the rest of the clan is looking on in horror at Fernleap. Brightorrent managed to break the skin of his scruff, and the venom that she has in her fangs was enough to stop his heart long before they reached the boat. The healers don't know how to break it to her, and even after many attempts at resuscitating him, they are unsuccessful, and Fernleap does not make it. Okay. Big Pelt and Acorn Crest are close to one another when everything starts to happen and the floodwaters start to come in. Big Pelt, who had heard some of what was to come inadvertently, and went out to swim to try and learn how to save herself when this moment came, pushes Acorn Crest out in front of her, even as horrible images flash through her brain of when she inhaled salt water and barely made it out with her life once. She doesn't know she's going to have the strength to do this, but she is going to do the very best that she can. She and Acorn Crest are both at the same amounts of disadvantage when it comes to innate gifts, but the two set off to the best of their abilities through the wind and rain and surf. They manage to see Wisteria Berry floating away on a boat, and they set off for the boat. They don't notice at first when a third head pops up alongside them. It is Timetail, who, despite not necessarily inheriting their father's muscular body, is still a bigger, stronger cat, and his strong prehensile tail is curled up alongside his body where it will prevent the least amount of drag through the water. Big Pelt sees that he's able to help out another clan, even though he's not really able to say it as well because of the surf that keeps breaking over their head. She sees the offer in his eyes, but looks away. She knows how awful it would be to meet StarClan out in these waters, and she doesn't want that for her sister. She indicates a timetail to leave her and to help Acorn Crest. Her timetail knows that they can't help everybody, and they need to make a choice. They can save themselves, and they can save one other clanmate. They choose to honor Big Pelt's request with a very affirming nod, and against Acorn Crest's exhausted efforts, they are able to tow her away. Big Pelt looks on until she can no longer see the duo before slipping under the waves. Okay. Softstar was near the front of the cave, but with his back turned to the entrance, not wanting to see what his deputy is looking on at. He is hoping that he was making the right choice, but once the water started to flood in around him, pushing him further into the cave, he knew he had gambled wrong. Using his muscular body, he sets off swimming powerfully against the tide and manages to break the surface of the air no problem. He looks on as he sees fewer and fewer clanmates coming up for air alongside him. Really, less than half of them even made it out to begin with. He feels the sorrow beginning to prick at his paws and pelt and heart. He knows he can't give up now, however. This is not the time or the moment to give up, even if he knows it's wrong. He pushes what clanmates he can see, trying to help them keep aloft, but in particular, he pays attention to his child Timetail, who, by their own merits, is big and powerful by this point as well, too, but still not as powerful as their father. And when it comes to the choice that Timetail had to make, Sawstar looks on and sets off, choosing to try and help Timetail reach the boat that Wasirberry has managed to lead the clan to. Sawstar gives his child all the support that he can in helping Acorn Crest make it to the boat. But the rest of the clan is confused when Sawstar sets back out to the ocean, despite there being no glimpses of any of their clanmates' heads above the surface of the water, so Softstar says only that he has to try, and sets off. He simply cannot bring himself to acknowledge that the few cats on the boat are all that remains of his clan, and he feels immense grief and loss at the fact that by leading the clan up to the cliff, he could have led to more doom for the rest of the clan than if they had just stayed on the beach where they could have found a boat that could have brought them up to the surface of the water with. He simply can't acknowledge that by trying to lead the clan away from such a grievous fate, he led them directly into its jaws instead. He sets off powerfully swimming through the ocean, but it is unforgiving, and he sees nothing and no one. Sawstar turns and wonders if he can make it back to the boat. He thinks that he could, but acknowledges himself that he wasn't the one who found that salvation in the first place, and he wonders if he should be the one to get to enjoy it. He thinks maybe all of those doubts that he had about leading his clan are true, and he's simply not equipped for the job. The entire time he's led the clan since Drizzlestar's demise, he's thought that he's been doing a poor job, and has, at this point, since it's been confirmed, known he's leading his clanmates astray and doing it wrong. So in his mind, this is not what FrogClan needs, and he is not the leader for them. He asks StarClan in that moment to rescind his lives as he falls beneath the surface of the waves and prays for his mate and his child who are on the boat, that they will be led to safety, the safety that he would not afford himself. And Sawstar is lost. And that's the event. These are all of our survivors. I will say I'm really shocked that Lotus Shade made it, because I actually gave her a higher roll to make it pass because of her age and disability. That was an extremely rough event. Again. So with that, the clan, as small as it is, stays huddled on the boat that they found themselves on, rocking back and forth in the waves. And eventually the boat, because it is old, does start to take on water. The clan feels that they have lost all hope when they start to see the familiar cliff that they had sheltered in emerging from the tide. It seems that the wave is going down in some capacity, and they manage to ride the boat, broken though it may be, as it sets them back down exactly on the beach where it started. They can only assume that it was StarClan itself that guided the boat there, and didn't set them out further at sea or even far away from their territory. But the clan, grief-stricken, shocked and shaken, hopples off of their boat salvation and onto the familiar beach. The boats that were there are more torn up than before. Most other boats are entirely unusable now, even if it seems they could have been once. And they rest their claws in the drenched sand of their home, while the herbs were lost, and what wasn't is now strewn everywhere. But most importantly, the clan does have each other, and they will go on to the best of their ability. And they take this time to huddle together, to share comfort and stories, and to rest assured that the clan will continue in some form. Okay, that was intense. Over a page of cats, and we are basically down to starting clan again, which is really rough. Sawstar rolled very poorly, which is why he didn't even really get a chance to help out any other cats, even though he had 9 lives to do so. So really the best thing that he could ask for at that time was just a quicker end than 9 lives would afford. I didn't even realize that Brighthorn and Fernleap had feelings for one another until this event, which makes it all the more tragic that she survived and he did not, which is why it was a true Shakespearean ending for them. If they're gonna have to go through it, they're gonna go through it. I'm curious to see what that does to Brighthorn's development. I'm shocked that Lotus Shade made it. She had more of a disadvantage than any other cat due to her age and the nature of her injury. But she got a natural 20, so when the DC for most other cats was 15, she had to make it. So I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of cats that could help or hurt one another necessarily in this event. I tend to roll very poorly. Cats rolled very poorly for this. A lot of the cats that did make the DC barely even did so, and cats that exceeded were cats I would not have thought would have survived at all. Cough cough Lotus Shade. So there just wasn't a lot of extra help to go around. So this is what our clan currently is. I hope you appreciate what I did manage to do with it. I hope that this doesn't go against the nature of the challenge too much. I kind of took the premise that I had and just made it every cat for themselves at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, if you're stuck in a flooding room, there's only one way out and a lot of people are in front of you. You have no idea what's going to happen after that. You are by yourself. So, I hope you all enjoyed this. I'm devastated. I'm utterly devastated at the sheer amount of cats that we lost. I'm happy that some of my favorites are still here. We've got Lotus Shade, Snip Husk, and Timetail. Wisteria Berry will become Wisteria Star. And that's really where we're at. We've got so many cats up in StarClan. I was really hoping that Privet Paw here was going to make it, but they did not. Same with Lobster Shell, this beautiful blue cat. But that's okay. This challenge was always meant to be unforgiving. I've done what I can to try and make it at least go on. If you would like to continue FrogClan with the events that I listed here as having happened, please let me know, and I'll continue it. But if you feel that this went too against the nature of the challenge, or that I made too many exceptions, or anything like that, just let me know. I am also considering, since Acorn Crest, I believe, is the only normal cat that actually made the roll. They did have a slightly harder DC than the cats that were mutated. Yeah, since Acorn Crest is the only one that was normal that made the roll, let me know if you want me to add on a mutation for her just because of surviving the event. I feel like that's enough to go through for a random mutation, more so than like getting attacked by a fox or something would be. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, I'm happy to listen to them and take them into consideration. But we'll see how everything shakes out next episode, because I've been going quite a while, even just with that. So until next time, I will see you all then. Stay safe, stay happy, and bye.